Yeah. And then you saw 4 pages.
I only have 3.
Test, test, test. Test. Hello? Oh.
I don't think the clicker was working last time.
Was it? Okay.
I don't know if it was. I didn't use it. I assumed it was not.
Okay. Thanks for letting me know.
Okay, you're still working on it. Good. Okay. It's us, right?
Huh?
Yeah, it's you guys here. You guys are.
Clicker? Yeah, that's not
the right presentation? That's what I thought.
the financing one.
The financing one again? We had some technical difficulties with ours. Breakout 2, developing financing. That looks correct. Let's make sure we get you guys closed captioning on. Let's get you guys recording as well.
Sure, why?
Oh, you guys are already recording. Perfect. The students are on it. Perfect. And then this should be, are you the presenter, sir, or you would rather have a facilitator? This just changes the slides. So it's going forward. Yes, sir. Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, do you want to test it real quick? Make sure it's working, everything, sir?
Good.
I should use to click on the presentation.
Oh, no.
And you're live right now in recording, sir. So, and microphone, or you should want to give it to them. And if you'd rather not hold the microphone, sir, there's also a, just turn it on. If you'd rather not hold it up, we can click it as well, sir. It worked last time. So. Perfect. We're just outside if you need anything. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm waiting.
Just, five.
Your seats up front.
Yeah.
That's right.
Hello, everybody. I'm gonna go ahead and get us started since we are already a little bit over time. So, thanks all for coming, and this is gonna be our session on development financing. We have some great folks here today from the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. And we have Lauren, our developer here as well. So if you're all in the last session, and experienced seeing those projects that are already in the works, these folks are gonna tell you how to pay for it. And so enjoy, and with that, I'll kick it off.
Is
Mike.
Yeah, is Wayne good here?
Wayne won't be.
Okay. We're good.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Falleson, and I'm one of the commercial loan officers at the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. And I kind of specialize in bond finance projects. That's my forte, and I'll kind of describe what that is a little bit. I wanted to start off by just showing the basic mission and vision of CHFA. We strengthen Colorado by investing in affordable housing and community development, and everyone in Colorado will have the opportunity for housing stability, economic prosperity. So that's what we do. That's our goal. That's our objectives. Okay, what is CHFA? CHFA is not a state agency. It doesn't receive any tax dollars to operate. We're self-funded through our lending work that we do from the profits of our lending. And we're governed by an 11-member board, established in 1973. In 1982, we received authority to use bond proceeds, expanding our role into economic development beyond just housing. To date, since we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, we've invested about $35.3 billion in the state of Colorado. We're poised to have one of our strongest years ever in terms of debt finance, very active, obviously, with the tax credit program, which you're going to hear about in a little bit. I'd like to throw this housing continuum up because it gives you kind of how CHFA focuses its work. So you've got homeless, transitional, or permanent support housing, all below 30% the area of median income or at below. And then we get into affordable rental housing, 30 to 80%. Middle income housing, 80 to 120%. So we have programs to finance really that entire spectrum of housing. So in terms of how we create affordable housing, and this isn't anything new, it's a way to look at the work that we all do. And that is, we create housing through either providing an asset subsidy and or income subsidy. You've heard a lot today about rent vouchers and project-based rental assistance. That's one way to subsidize affordable housing. But what we're going to focus on today is the asset subsidies that are used to finance affordable housing. And with that, I'm going to give it to my partner over in the tax department, Denise DeBroy, and then I'll come back.
Okay. No, I got it. Good afternoon. The low-income housing tax credit came into fruition in the Tax Reform Act of 1986. And since then, it has been a huge success throughout the nation with over 3.7 million units developed or preserved and over 80,000 units just in Colorado alone. And so with Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, we are for the entire state. So we get applications from everywhere in the state. So part of the, so every state does have to do a qualified allocation plan. And ours is a 2-year plan. So we work very hard with getting community feedback, public feedback, tax credit advisory group feedback, tax credit allocation committee, feedback, and of course, some of our lending partners and, investors. So we, generate this qualified allocation plan, which includes, the guiding principles, the criteria for approval, and our priorities. So we have 2 competitive rounds, which are very oversubscribed, usually 3-1, sometimes 4-1. So it's a very popular resource, and developments compete at a very high level. So I would say if you are thinking about bringing in a tax credit deal, work with a consultant, because you really need that expertise to really navigate this system. It's not a one and done, because there's a lot to learn. It's very fascinating, but it's worth the brain damage to continue on. So know that you're in for the long haul. The round 1 starts in February, round 2 in August, and then the non-competitive, which is the federal 4%, which is standalone. It's not competitive, but you do have to bring in your bond cap. So of the 2 types of federal housing, we have both the 9% again and the 4%. So the 9% is the Cadillac, and it brings in about 70% of the investment for your total project costs. So that's why people are really after this subsidy. And well, it's not really a subsidy, it's an investment. So it's a private public partnership. The tax credits are sold to an investor, and that equity from the investor is what helps to pay for these deals. The 4%, of course, is a lower percentage, so it is about 30% of the total project cost. This is what a capital stack looks like, and so this is all your funding or your financing, so your sources. The federal credits, on the 9% side, you can see is the elephant in the room. It's the lion's share. This is what you want to see. The federal 4% is about 33%, and then with the state credits, it comes to almost 50%. So it's getting a little bit up there. Then you have the senior debt and the soft funds, as well as a deferred developer fee. So the legislation, Colorado state legislation was very busy this year and has awarded us additional 2 new programs, middle income housing tax credits and transit oriented communities housing tax credit. These are pilot programs. The middle income housing tax credit is the first in the nation. So we're pretty excited about launching this. This is going to serve folks that are at 80% of their median income to 120%. And then if you're in like the mountain regions and rural resorts, it can go up to 140%. It's a standalone. And the reason why it's a standalone and will not be paired with our affordable housing tax credits is because our affordable goes up to 80% EMI. And with the transit-oriented communities, that can be a standalone, or it can be paired with a housing tax credit project. And now it's back over to Mike.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. So, that one slide that you saw where, I'm gonna talk about the orange piece of the pie, the debt side of a project. And as you can see, the The 9% project has less debt than the 4% side. And again, I kind of focus in my career at CHFA on the 4% and state tax credits, underwriting and feasibility analysis with regard to those types of projects. But I want to talk a little bit about PAB, or private activity bonds. Private activity bonds are a federal resource that are given to all the states in the nation. And it gives the state agencies like CHFA the ability to issue tax exempt debt for private purposes. Unlike, say, other government type bond programs to build schools and roads and other infrastructure, this is specifically for affordable housing development. So it's the PAB financing, getting tax exempt debt. We issue bonds, the bonds are sold into the market, the proceeds from the sale of those bonds are then lent to private developers who pay those bonds off through the project income. So 4% federal tax credit is paired with bonds, and we size the PAB based on the 50% of the aggregate basis of land plus eligible basis. It's known as the 50% test. I want to talk a little bit about other types of financing that we have. I just talked about the bread and butter of CHFA's financing program, which is the PAB, tax-exempt bonds. We do issue taxable debt for 9% projects. So the 9% tax credit projects are going to carry with a slightly higher interest rate, about the same term, but because we're issuing tax-exempt bonds at 4%, it's a lower interest rate. And just better financing opportunities in terms of rate. But now middle income and small scale. Real quick, middle income is intended to program addresses the middle income workforce, sometimes referred to as the missing middle. It's intended to target households earning between 80 and 120% of the area median income. It's mezzanine debt, it's secondary financing behind a CHFA, or it doesn't have to be a CHFA first lien position deal. You can get a first lien from a bank. We would come in behind that, and a second lien loan sizes are up to 6 million. Second lien trust has 6% rate. We can provide for interest only during construction, and it's really a great program, and we're very excited to be able to offer that to the public. I want to turn now to kind of the big story in Colorado in the last couple of years, which is Prop 123. Proposition 123 is the Affordable Housing Finance Fund, which we work and partner with OHED. So I'm going to be talking about the 60% slide there, where we are getting and partnering with OHED to allocate 96 million in the first year, and year two, 191 million. And that takes that type of, that Prop 123 provides these three types of financing. We can do land banking, which is done through our business finance division, equity, and then concessionary debt. And you can see the dollars that are allocated for equity. We manage equity and concessionary debt on behalf of OED. So concessionary debt provides loan options to for-profit and nonprofit entities for the creation and preservation of affordable housing. We can do multifamily finance, we can do gap finance, we can do pre-development finance, and then some modular finance through the concessionary debt program. The equity program provides below market rate equity investments. It's not debt, it's equity. For eligible projects, nonprofit, for-profit entities, for construction, so new construction, preservation of low and middle income housing. I won't read the bullets on the right-hand side are pretty technical. Won't get too much into that. You can, as an applicant, you can choose which of the two you want to apply for. Oh, and one thing I wanted to share with you just very quickly before I turn it over is we have, on the concessionary debt so far, we have allocated 14.5 million. On the equity, we've allocated 39.3 million. And we We allocated another 21 million for equity in the second round. And then concessionary debt will be open in January of 2025 for the next year's funding cycle. And we will have, we received so far 15 applicants were received, totaling 48 million. And we're going to select the ones that we want to move forward with in January. You know, the long and short of this, guys, is I don't expect any of you to remember these programs, right? The idea is we would prefer you bring us your ideas. We'll figure out which one of these buckets we can fund it with, right? That's really my hope today. I should have said it last session is come to us with your ideas. Let us look at your numbers. We'll figure out a way to finance it. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren.
There's our contact information, if you want to contact them, yeah.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Lauren.
Hi, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Lauren Schevets. I work with a company called Volker, and I'm primarily a LIHTC, affordable housing and workforce housing developer. We are a national company, a new company, but I am located here locally in Boulder. My past is both private and public sector. I did work for the city of Boulder's housing authority called Boulder Housing Partners for nearly 5 years, so very familiar with the area. I'm just going to give a really high level overview of development process and challenges for you. Here, this house here represents the total cost of a development. When you want to provide housing that is more affordable than market rate housing, you have reduced rents and the income doesn't provide enough resources to fund your development, either building the development or ongoing operations. So you need to find subsidy. I just feel like that's the biggest part of my job is being able to find the resources to fill in that gap, to make the housing a reality. So, some of the funding sources Mike and Denise mentioned just now, but that includes tax credits, federal and state funding, local funding, vouchers, whether that be 811 vouchers or a locally funded voucher, charitable contributions, and then deferred developer fee is a really large component of our funding sources. So when I'm looking at a new development, these are the first things that I'm looking at. That includes the target population, partnerships. Who is going to be that consultant that Denise was talking about? Who's going to be your developer? Those are really important conversations. Who's going to be the primary service provider? And then also who are the project champions? Who's going to help you get the project across the finish line, help to be your advocate? Obviously you need land to build housing. Is that land adequately zoned to provide for multifamily housing? As a LIHTC developer, I'm typically looking at, what type of tax credits are we trying to procure? Is it 4% plus state? Is it 9%? And then that also then in turn goes into our timeline for the project and when we want to deliver those units. So many people go into the development of these projects. The developer, the owner, property manager is a really, really important component of housing neuro-inclusive communities. Service providers, lender, equity investor, who's going to buy the tax credits, your governmental and funding partners, your general contractor, the design team. Rochelle was talking about dignified design at the last session. Your design team itself has loads of engineers, architects, landscape architects, sustainability consultants, accessibility consultants, and then there's lots of lawyers. So one of the projects that I was really lucky to have the opportunity to work on was this community in the Globeville neighborhood of Denver, called the Elizabetta. It was built in partnership between Gorman and Company and Laridan, and it was a true partnership. Laridan provided the land and leased the land in a long-term partnership to the developer, to Gorman. 91 homes were built, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. 25% of the units were designated for individuals with disabilities. And then additionally, a very large, I think, 11,000 square foot community space was provided to Laridan for their adult day programming. There were two phases, actually 3 phases of this development, one including the Habitat for Humanity as well. Funding sources, it was a 4% plus state tax credits, a traditional mortgage. City of Denver provided a large subordinate loan. State of Colorado also provided a subordinate loan. Section 811 project-based vouchers, special limited partnership with Denver Housing Authority. The operating budget did provide funding to Laridan for case management. It also provided a ground lease payment to Laridan. So in addition to receiving services at the property, Laridan also had this ongoing source of funding to help with their operations. So one of the biggest challenges with that development in that community was that the 811 voucher tenant selection did not actually align with the tenants that we were really hoping to serve at the community. And so I think when you're developing a new neuro-inclusive community, you need to make sure that the voucher, the operating subsidy that you are receiving truly serves the individual community that you want to provide housing for. I know that they are working through some changes to the 811 program in Colorado, and hopefully that is the solution there. But you can have locally funded vouchers, you can have privately funded vouchers as well. And then also in alignment with that, the ongoing services funding. Are you going to pay for that out of your operating budget? Are you going to pay for it out of cash flow for the property? Are you going to pay for it with donations? So lots of challenges, but the opportunity that I see is that there's a whole lot of people here today, and everyone is really excited about tackling the challenges that we have and developing housing. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
We'd like to have some time to, because a lot of this is pretty technical stuff, and if there's questions that any of you might have, we'd like to, give them time to answer those questions. I was a little bit remiss in forgetting to tell you that Chapel just received notice last week that we received for the sixth time U.S. Treasury with us $5.5 million, what's called Capital Magnet Fund, $4.5 million Capital Magnet Fund dollars, and we will be deploying that to be paired with 4% and 9% tax credit projects. And we have, as I mentioned, we've gotten this Capital Magnet Fund allocation for many, many years, and we've used that to the tune of about $33 million into the state of Colorado using that particular program. And again, I wanted to just, I tell you that story about the Capital Magnet Fund and just sort of highlight all the financial resources that Colorado is fortunate to have to develop housing, like what this conference is all about. And I was so the Grove at Cottonwood, such a cool project in Tall Tales. Tall Tales is one of the projects that we made an equity investment in under Prop 123. But yeah, the Grove Cottonwood is just an example of how all these programs can be brought to bear to get a housing project off the ground. And so we like to be pretty creative. And with that, all of us are happy to answer any questions that you might have about finance. All right. Okay.
Let's say that a multifamily property wanted to have, commercial space on its first floor, or even space that might be loaned out to, or that might be leased out to a nonprofit organization or something like that. Is that possible?
Certainly is. Would you like to? I can answer it. But I'll answer it.
Is it a tax credit deal?
Perhaps. Let's think that's a tax credit.
Well, if it is, well, assuming it's a tax credit deal, you, in order to have that in basis, you would, meaning the tax credit would cover the expense of that space, you would have to be in what's called qualified census tract. And it has to be, for the use or serve the community as well as the residents at either free or, so say it's a daycare that they put in there. It would be a reduced fee for the residents that live there, but it would also serve the surrounding community. If it's not an QCT, then it would have to have a separate source and be probably condoed out. That tenant finish would, you still could do it, but it's an additional expense. And I've seen it done with new markets tax credits, which is a whole different animal. And along with the tax credits, both 9% and 4%. So, yes, it can be done.
So it's, oops, sorry. Oh, I was gonna say, so it sounds like there's a lot of different things that are possible, but there needs to be a lot of discussion about how that works. But in my experience, I've seen a lot of different things happen. And the good news here is that it sounds like CHFA is pretty open to having those discussions.
Yeah, we love innovation, we love creativity, and there are some brilliant people at CHFA. My colleagues are some of the best in the business, I would say, and they're committed to this mission, and part of our priorities is homeless, special populations, and rural communities. So that's a higher level of competition, or elevation in the competition by having special population.
I wanted to circle back to this service provision piece and funding for that. I am really struggling to crack that code, right? And there's one thing to put it into your operations budget. I find that by the time we get to this point, like the funds just were stretched so thin, the funds just aren't there. I can find funds for programming. But this is specifically with like the high tech developments, right? And I really struggle with finding funds for people. You know, a lot of foundations don't want to support people because if you don't get funded the next time, you know, someone's losing their job. Have you heard anything like, are any products being developed like similar to maybe a HUD multifamily project where you could apply for funding for a service coordinator? Have you heard anything along that lines coming online for the LIHTC?
So the state of Colorado, through their permanent supportive housing program, does provide services funding. Also, the city and county of Denver will match the state of Colorado, but beyond that, I don't know of service dollars. I think Denise does.
That's what I found, like service dollars for chronic homelessness or PSH level, but, yeah.
Right. It is a tough nut.
Yeah.
And you're right to be very concerned. And I think investors are very concerned about that too. So on 100% project, you really have to know where those sources are coming from. If it's fundraising, if it's grants, so depending on, I've seen where, some of the service providers are big time fundraisers. And that's really tough, and it's tough to underwrite to that too. So coming in with, those funds already raised and capitalized to where it'll take you out to 20 years is what we're looking for. But it is a tough nut, you're absolutely right, and maybe, maybe the governor would have some additional.
We could look at a different state, because we happen to have somebody here.
Oh,
I was gonna actually ask a similar question, because this is the thing where our projects are, have on-site staff, and it's offering what is always the biggest thing, and the way we've done it in our projects so far is gotten, philanthropic funds to cover some of the upfront costs, which reduces our long-term debt, so then we're paying that money long-term on interest, we're paying it for staff salary, but your lenders have to be on board with that. So that has to work with all your funding programs, and so that it's still a puzzle there. But as long as your funders are on board for that, you can essentially reduce what you're paying in interest and pay that money to people instead. So that's how we work through it. But you then have to have the philanthropic sources to be able to put in enough money to offset those costs in your operations.
Yeah.
Why don't you just describe, Louisa, who you are and with the property you're talking about?
I work for an organization called Falleson, and we have two properties in California, one which is operational, the second one which is, we're in the last couple months of construction right now. They both LIHTC. Well, one is a LIHTC project, one is very similar to LIHTC in California. It's a certain program, but essentially funded LIHTC and use this method to pay for, 2 full-time staff and operations for just resident services.
One thing that I'm testing right now with CHFA is a resident services reserve budget to capitalize that in my development budget so that at least we have something for overages or unexpected services needs. We'll see if that's supported. But the other thing is I want to just caution you against using the resources for chronically homeless permanent supportive housing. That is one mistake that I've seen made in my history, and there's just some unintended consequences that make it a little unfair to the population, to the property manager. So
We've been down that path, and so that's. We've figured out how to use those resources more effectively now, but yeah, not.
that's exactly right. You know, you're trying to use the resources that are available to you, but it just is not quite the right fit.
But I think that's a really great point, is that there's permanent supportive housing has a model that people in the industry understand, and therefore it can be financed. And so if IBD can form a model that can be understood, then we can work toward permanent financing down the line.
great thought.
There was a question from the last session about, does Colorado have a specific program, just sort of set aside and written for the IDP population? The answer is no. But, from a finance perspective, it's just an eligible project type for us, right?
I think.
And same for the tax credit department. So, while there's not we'd love to have an actual program geared specifically. We don't, but it's something that we will look at very carefully.
Didn't mention, do you have what's called a small scale housing technical assistance program? And we have it for, the neurodiverse. So it is specifically, in fact, I just lost her name.
Kristen?
No, Kamika.
Oh, Desiree.
Desiree, I just lost her first name. I could say Kamika Galloway, but, so Desiree, thank you. So anyway, there is, a way to apply. If you have land and you have a project that you have in mind, You can apply for that, small scale housing, and it's usually 30 units or lower. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, out in, a rural or resort areas, because that's what our small scale housing was initially intended for, but this is sort of an extra benefit that, CHFA is offering for, special populations, so for to have a neuro-inclusive housing project.
And it's funded by CHFA, so, if you're accepted, it's cost free.
Thank you for bringing, I forgot to mention, President. This
You still forgot.
small scale, I did it the first time too. Yeah, I'm actually working on 3 small scale projects right now, one in Colorado Springs, and then very rural Colorado. But yeah, it's a program that, 2.5% money, 30-year fixed, 30 grand. It's pretty, that kind of financing can go a long ways.
Just so you know, in the earlier session, there was a representative from the Colorado Division of Housing here, talking about some of the programs that they have. A lot of their programs are in the way of, relative to what we're talking about here, have to do with gap financing, right? So gap financing is that piece of the financing stack. And Mike actually talked about the few of the CHFA has, like the middle income access program, but gap financing is that piece of the puzzle that sort of gets you over the finish line, right? And so the Colorado Division of Housing, which is part of the Department of Local Affairs, they have various programs that can help with projects that find themselves a little bit short, right? So that they can provide either low interest in some cases even what they call soft debt, which is like, it's financing that you pay for only if you have the cash flow to be able to pay for it. In some instances, they provide grants as well. So if you're looking at a project and you get to that point where there's a gap, they're obviously a good resource. And I have a question for Lauren. That's okay. So if I were somebody, a group of people, Lauren, and I wanted to approach you because you're a developer, so you know how to build the property, right? I might have land, or I might have interested people or something like that. What would you want to see out of, say, a grassroots group of people to say, yeah, I'm interested in probably working on that as a developer?
Let's see, I think the first thing that's most important is you have an exciting group of people that are really motivated. So I think that goes a really long way. If you have land, even better. If it's suitably located and zoned and close to transportation, great. For me as a developer, we would probably want to see a desire from 40 to 50 units of housing because that's an appropriate size for tax credit development, a 9% deal. If you're looking at, if it's a large piece of property, then we'd look at maybe a 4% plus state deal. But those are just the really basic components, but I think the excitement and organization of a group is the first big step, right? But then we have conversations with CHFA, have conversations with the local jurisdiction and, try to figure out if there is general support for a new community like that.
You mentioned that you were working on some small scale projects. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because it's my understanding that the lifetime projects and the projects that the developers like tend to be like 40 or 50 units. What are some options, or what are those projects like?
The small scale housing program is for 5 to 19 units is technically is what I think our flyer, but we'll go above 19, it could be 20, 21, something like that. But it's 90% loan to cost, so we will finance 90% of the deal. So the borrower will need to bring his 10% equity. Again, we underwrite it at a 2.5% interest rate, 30-year AM. Our credit policy is going to require you to, we would like to see your numbers at a 10% vacancy rate. We will underwrite it at a 10% vacancy. And what else? We have operating reserves. I'd like to see that at 6 months of OpEx and plus 6 months of debt service. I don't know if I'm answering, I'm kind of deep in the weeds, I know maybe with some of that.
I can find a more general description of what the communities are like and
Okay.
if there's, people behind them or what,
Yeah.
if they are intentional communities.
Yeah, the project in Colorado Springs is an acquisition we have of a older naturally occurring affordable housing project, 6 units, I think it is. Silver Cliff is new construction. And then Lyons, Colorado, not very far from here, that is 9 units. It's 8 units of acquisition and 1 new unit, new construction.
It's a really good reason why to look into the small scale technical assistance that they have, because if you're looking at it, if you're looking at a property, if you're looking at developing a small scale property that will be inclusive, neuro-inclusive, one of their partners, Desiree Kamika Galloway, can really help bring the vision to that. Mike and crew are gonna really be good at bringing the numbers to, real technical stuff to it. But Desiree can say, okay, well, here's what it needs to look like, here are the elements you need to have there, and those kinds of things. So, it's really a nice benefit to really have that, to kick it off, because, she'll help refine, the vision of it so that it makes a little bit more sense, so that these guys can put their numbers to it, say, okay, we can take your vision and run it.
I would say in the 3 deals that I just mentioned, it was really, we took a lot of time evaluating the developer because they have to go in understanding the long-term compliance that is that's the string that's attached to the deal. And that long-term compliance is it's a regulatory agreement filed with the deed. And so it runs with the property. And so we have to really evaluate. It's one thing to finance the deal, but to manage it for 30 years, we really want to get our head around that and understand who's going to be managing it over time. So the way we're going down, these are kind of inexperienced developers in all 3, but we've asked them to go through compliance training. They've all agreed to do it. And they understand the financial reporting that comes with the project on an annual basis with our compliance manager. So it's a matter of really teaching what comes with our financing. And it does come with some long-term affordability restrictions. But we can get through it by just education, through an education process. So we have maybe 1 minute left to go.
Can you give us the name of the one in Lyons? Do you know the?
Well, it's not the Lyons Townhomes, if that's what you're thinking of. It is, it goes by the street address, like 317 Lyons Avenue, something like that. It's being developed by a husband and wife team who have residential experience.
That's awesome. Okay.
Are we about my time? Okay, yeah. Well, thanks everybody for coming, and you got about 10 minutes. So your final breakout session, and then please stick around because like the Lieutenant Governor is going to come in and say a few words to those at the end. We'd like her to have a nice audience. So thank you very much.
And please check out our street friendly room. It's around the corner. Our partner Autism Community Store has brought that in today. It's a lovely space if you're looking to chill out.
I know, I almost want to, again, so I just feel like you. Synergy, but I think probably something already has. It's like. Yeah, you know, like.
But yes, you can see me the person that should.
So it's interesting, like the property in Lyons, I just feel like, I mean, with the county and, you know, because we already have the two properties up there that are the senior and are disabled properties. I really like this one here, like, ooh, it feels like there's some
Eve now,
synergy.
you know, Eve now, and the current house that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's very, very needed and very cool. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so now, we kind of got back to them 13 years ago. They want to.
One of 2000.
Oh, I use those do it again, right? Yeah. Yeah, because we are kind of there.
We just talked. So where I'm still. It's like really fun.
It was a share because when the unnational did not, they passed on that site initially. And then one was falling apart. And I thought, oh, no.
Oh,
It's so wonderful. Oh my God. When I cried when they come in and said, I did, it's part of the world that, or one of the times that are being made about it. So, yeah.
you're in the middle of what?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, for permission, I'm just going.
Great.
Yeah, you do. Hopefully we find an opportunity to work together.
Guarantees are fine now.
But I know, actually.
So on our 1%. We're out.
Okay. I expect.
It's my power stance. I figured out which one it was. They're doing building community relations. Here, which I said that super confidently. Damn it, I didn't say it. What did the picture say? There were the three. I don't think that's the right schedule anymore. Community partnership. It's written on the door.
Hello,
Oh, you guys are my next presentation.
yeah.
Back, ready to go. This time there'll be less technical difficulties. I've got all the kinks figured out. I had to sit there and mess with a couple laptops, but I got all the
Oh,
work.
there you go, so, and we get a clicker this time?
And a clicker this time.
Hey.
Clicker that works.
That's
My
good.
apologies
It's
about
okay,
last time.
You're good.
My fault.
Oh, oh, so you work up here?
I pretend to.
Oh,
I don't know if they actually allow me to work here.
Oh.
But no, yes, I do.
that's cool.
I am the conference and event space coordinator. So I'm
Nice.
supposed to be, yeah,